Okay, here we go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time of day it is. I hope it's good to be where you are, because it is most certainly good to be here. My name is Baltimore Fats, and this is Mud City. Yeah. Okay, so hello everyone. I hope everyone is well today. So this picture means that season 2 it's underway. I mean, this isn't the first episode of it or anything, but research has begun. Yeah, and this is just sort of like a little teaser because although I was planning to do a video for today on a different subject, my friend Mary said she wanted to go to the library and yesterday, so we went to the library, and the main branch library here in Baltimore is right across the street from the Basilica, from the National Shrine of the Assumption of the Blessed Virgin Mary. So, which is very important to the story, And in season 1, I talk a little bit about, how Maryland was founded to be a refuge for Catholics and other religions that were feeling persecuted. And, there's lots of funny business with the story of Catholicism and the crown and the Protestants and the English Civil War. And, it's certainly all going to tie in. So season 2 is going to be pretty history heavy going back, and you'll see why it needs to go that way. But so anyway, yeah. So essentially, this is going to be a quick sort of field trip slideshow of my and Mary's excursion to the library yesterday, and how excited it has me for what's coming. And one of the questions I asked in season 1 about, what were they doing here? What was so important about setting up this sort of refuge for Catholics, right? And I found this pamphlet, The Maryland Act of Religious Toleration. All right, and this is an essay celebrating 300 years of the Act of Concerning Religion, which was signed in the Maryland General Assembly, April 2nd, 1649. Freedom of conscience. Now, this is a very tricky thing here, I think, and I'm going to read just like one paragraph of it now because I'm going to do a whole presentations on it. Like I said, this is just like a sneak peek of what's to come, I guess you could call this. And because it's very important. There's a reason why the Calverts didn't care about, changing in the midst of all of this turmoil. George Calvert, the first Lord Baltimore, changes. He switches from Protestantism to Catholicism at the height of his political powers. Essentially suicide, but it certainly wasn't for him, and there's a reason for that. And I'm going to try to find out what that reason is, and it's going to start here, I think, right? So anyway, I'm going to just read this. This is just in mid-paragraph. This is paraphrasing things here. Well, this is going to be, I'm just picking little bits out. So it says, religious toleration was not new to the men and women of Maryland. Planned by George Calvert, the first Lord Baltimore, and actually founded by his son Cecilius, the province was primarily a haven for persecuted Catholics, yet its founders had welcomed and even sought Protestant settlers. Furthermore, back in November 1633, in the first paragraph of his instructions to the governor and commissioners, the second Lord Baltimore had warned his Catholic and Protestant colonists, then leaving for the New World, that they were not to give offense to one another in matters of religion. This forbearance, he had added, they were to observe on land as well as at sea. Now, I want you to remember, of course, that the boats that the governor and these commissioners were coming over on as they were leaving England were the Hawk and the Dove, further tying Baltimore into a flood myth, right? So it says, once the Marylanders had landed, Roman Catholics and Protestants had shared a single chapel building at St. Mary's. Um, they go on. I'm just going to skip ahead a little bit here. And then it says, William Stone, a Protestant, had become Lord Baltimore's governor in 1648. He had been required to state on oath that he would neither molest nor discountenance any person professing belief in Jesus Christ. And finally, there had been a drawn-out dispute between Lord Baltimore and the Jesuit order. Priests in the colony had claimed the right to acquire land from the Indians and to hold it more or less independently of the Lord Propriety under conditions similar to those prevailing in the Catholic countries of Europe. With this claim, Cecilius Calvert had disagreed. He had carried his case to Rome, where the general of the Society of Jesus, that's the Jesuits, had forbidden the priests to acquire land in Maryland without the express approval of his lordship. All right, so that means there were Jesuit priests trying to acquire land for themselves, and the second, Cecil Calvert, the second Lord Baltimore, went to the Jesuits in Rome, and the Jesuits in Rome sided with him, which is a very interesting fact, very, very interesting. Okay, and so it's gonna. So now we're in the. So I just wanted to start with that. That's kind of going to be a part of one of my many jumping off points in Mud City Season 2. This painting I thought this is the painting you see when you enter the library. It's up when you walk in. It's up above to your left. And I thought this was an interesting painting. I don't know what's going on with this floating head back here. What kind of scroll he's reading? Kind of turban this is or hat. I have questions about this. What is this machine he's got going on? Kind of press or something. Very interesting painting, I thought, in the library, which I never really noticed this painting. The library is now being completely renovated, and I cannot believe that I don't have good pictures of what the library looked like before. I'm sure they're out there, but these are the 3 books they would actually let me take out of the religious section. All of them were for reference. So many volumes about the Carroll family, or certainly about John Carroll. You couldn't touch the books. There was books on the Jesuits in Baltimore that I could not take out because of reference. So these are what they let me take out, and these are going to be part of my springboard. Found this book in there, which I thought was interesting. Good. I had never heard of the Sulpicians before, and I hope I'm saying that right. And I think that's going to be a very interesting line of investigation. The Sulpicians. Curious about them. Mary took out this book, The Religion Under the Barons of Baltimore, and it says interesting things right from the jump. And I found this pamphlet, which is called Priests, Prisons for Women. Okay? Now, wait till you read that. Wait till you hear this. All right? Priests, Prisons for Women, or a consideration of the question whether unmarried foreign priests ought to be permitted to erect prisons, into which, under pretense of religion, to seduce or entrap, or by force compel young women to enter, and after they have secured their property, keep them in confinement, and compel them as their slaves to submit themselves to their will, under the penalty of flogging or the dungeon. In 12 letters! That's unbelievable that there isn't just one letter, and that letter says women aren't slaves. It's unbelievable. So I don't have pictures of it in this photo gallery, but I could not take this one out from the library, but I photocopied all of them, all 12 letters. It was long, longer than it should be. So I'm looking forward to, hopefully those pictures I can read from them, right? There was this is a sermon that was given. It's called The Olden Church, and I photocopied all of this one too, so I can't wait to read what this is about. But this was delivered at one of the cathedrals, and there's another page that lists the actual date and where it was delivered, 1848. A discourse presented at the Unitarian Convention at Baltimore on October 27, 1852. So I guess it was published in 1853. I didn't photocopy that one, but again, it's there. I'm gonna go read it. I did not photocopy, but rather take pictures of. I did take pictures of this one, not only because I thought the title was great, "Man Saved by Mercy," but the guy's name is Onderdonk. How could I not read a sermon by Onderdonk? All right, and then we found a bunch of old maps, and I'm gonna get into old maps, and I'm just gonna show this one interesting. It has a perfectly cut out square right at the inner harbor, which I thought was interesting. Um, there was this map, which I'm really fascinated with, which just seems to sort of have land grant names on them. Like, like these plots belong to Orange, you know, and there's some interesting names in here, interesting things, like Happy Be Lucky. What does that mean? This one's called Seed Ticks. As we go along, there's a really interesting one up here. This one's called Ill Will. That's unbelievable. Where is it? Where is it? Oh, I'm disappointed I can't find it now. There it is, Egypt. And look at that. It kind of has the body of Orion, right? Very interesting. There's a bunch of old maps. This was an exciting. And unfortunately, I spend more times in the books, looking at books and stuff, and photo and taking pictures of those books. I got to the maps late. Mary was elbow deep in them by the time I got there. I wanted to point out this crest here real quick, and I'm going to talk more about these maps. I'm going to do a bigger presentation, but this crest is really, really interesting to me. I'm just going to point out a few things. Like these look like these swirly here with these orbs in them, right? That's not part of this filament or pedigree or whatever this is, right? It's separate, and it looks to be like light emanating from, I guess these would be like candles, right? But the interesting thing to me are grapes, right? And now I'm beginning to see lots of grapes and things like that in these motifs. They were in Asheville, and they're on the police station building that I did a video on. So I thought that was very interesting, and I don't know, if all spirals are Fibonacci or whatever, however that works. I know that Fibonacci kind of has almost like an awkward appearance to it, and but sacred geometry, I'm sure, plays in with that. I wanted to point out this guy up here, his ears, sort of elven. He's got almost like a beard going on. And then look at this cat in here, and we're going to be talking about cats too. All right, these teeth, look at him. Interesting stuff. What does this have to do with Virginia and Maryland? Or why is this crest this way? Why am I finding lots of grapes and things like that around? This is an interesting map of Locust Point, or Whetstone Point, I guess, as it was at the time, which actually shows, almost like this is an island here. I mean, the Starfort is there. I didn't catch the date on this, but it has to be pretty early. So just based on what they're showing, I mean, it looks even less detailed than the 1792 one. So maybe this is even earlier than that. This is a great map. I can't wait to bust into that one. I wanted to point out just quickly look at the detail on this nautical rose here. This is unbelievable. And I noticed when I was looking at it, look at this thing. What is going on with this thing? It is spewing out water. And it's just hanging out in there. I don't know if that's, how much bigger can I get on this? I mean, I don't know what to make of that. I mean, that's not volcano. That's not lava and smoke. This is clearly, at least to me, representing some sort of geyser or spout out there. Very interesting. The Virginia Sea. there's this map of Virginia, which I'm going to look at briefly, and this is what's going to be exciting about that other map too. And I wanted to just show you what it says down here first. So this map is based on what was discovered and described by Captain John Smith in 1606. All right, and now I'm just going to show that this map was made, or this copy, I didn't quite get that corner, 1690 to 1691. All right, it has signification of these marks, right? It is the crosses both been discovered, what beyond is by relation. I'm not exactly sure what that means. King's houses, right, are these, right? In ordinary houses, I can't quite make out what that is. And I'll show you, there's something on the map that reminds me of this. So I'll show you what those are. But one thing I wanted to just, how far back can I? I mean, this is a really detailed map, and it's probably based on this other map that I'm going to show you in a second. But I wanted to show you some of this stuff. Look at all these mounds. What are all the mounds? And these little dots here, these are what I want to think are the ordinary houses versus these are king's houses. And then again, this is 1691 we're looking at here at the latest. And they say this is based on observations and discoveries of John Smith in 1609. I mean, look at that. It's like a little volcano or something. You know, all of this little mud, just mounds and mountains of mud or earth mounds, you know, crazy all over the place in Virginia. Just everywhere. You know, these little weird circle dots in these houses. You know, and there are lots of these crosses, which again, I'm going to read that one more time because I don't really understand what it said. Look, we got some, you know, here's a depiction of, I was hoping I would never have to say the word, but he's got a fasces. And his long bow. That is a long bow. Yeah, but they make him look savage. He looks rather quite hairy here, doesn't he? Almost even like scales. This weird, like, boar. It almost looks like a boar's, or wolf, jackal, something. Very interesting the way they represent that. You know, creating a narrative for the future, because these maps they knew were going to survive longer than the indigenous peoples were. Signification of this marks in the crosses both been discovered, what beyond is by relation. Yeah, I don't know. Old English gibberish to me, but clearly those X's are important, and there are a lot of them on this early map. So very interesting. All right, this is the map I think that one was probably based on. And this is not a picture that I took at the library yesterday. I didn't get a good one of the full map, but I did take details of these things, and we're gonna discuss them briefly. Lost my cursor there. So this is on this map. You know, it's the compass, right? And it's a scale of 8 English leagues and the scale of the English miles. All right, we got these guys, right? So this is the Virginia and Maryland. As it is planted and inhabited this present year, 1670, surveyed and exactly drawn by the only labor and endeavor of Augustine Herman, Bohemius. And I wish I got that in. but it says significations. Why can't I read that word today? Of some remarkable letters in this map, right? They denote uh, counties and several colonies, um, manors, but are not all inferred. Rivers, creeks, so forth. Plantations notifying only the manner of function, right? Indian houses and plantations. It's interesting that Indian houses and plantations would have the same mark on it. Small littered. These are sand and shoals where, and marshes and stuff, right? Interesting, and again, interesting depiction of like the natives, but this one also has like a Roman element or this Cupid element again with the longbow. She's got the rose, perhaps a Tudor rose. Um, yeah, I don't know this the significance of all of these things. And here we have the crest of the crown, right? This is for the United Crown, right? We got England and Scotland. The thing about this too is, it's good. Paid attention that these things are anatomically correct. Look at that. It's unbelievable. And it's interesting that this crown has a different sort of mask, knight's mask, than the Tudor, the Worm Knight one. And I think I end it with this slide. Oh, and then I'm going to talk about the guy. But I wanted to just mention that the English seal here is Dieve Edmond Droit, right? And I wanted to show that. That kind of looks like the cover of that the Acts of Tolerance pamphlet. So I looked up the translation of Dieu et mon droit, right? Meaning God and my right is the motto of the monarch of the United Kingdom outside Scotland. It appears on a scroll beneath the shield of the version of the coat of arms of the United Kingdom used outside Scotland. So I wonder why it was not used in Scotland. That's interesting. Said to have been first used by Richard I as a battle cry and presumed to be a reference to his French ancestry and the divine right of the monarch to govern. So that's very interesting that that this is on there, and I wonder. I'm gonna have to start looking when we move past the Tudors into the the Stuarts? Was the Stuarts first and then the Tudors, or the Tudor? Whenever we move into the House Hanover, I wonder if that motto is still engraved on there, because part of the whole English Civil War was overthrowing the Catholics taking the Catholics out of the crown, and the Parliament was Protestant. So it's interesting that would be the divine right of kings. This is the motto is French for God and my right, meaning the king is by the grace of God. It is used to imply that the monarch of a nation has a God-given divine right. So, yeah, and I'm going to get into, as season 2 develops, I'm going to get into how, my theory about the whole sort of recovery of after whatever the mud event was, right, and the recovery process that took place, and was sort of metered out to these different houses, these charter houses, and different phases of the cleanup, were assigned, so to speak. And the more I haven't done it a lot yet, but briefly I've looked. It's all going back to It's all going back to like 5 families, and that there is no separation from England and French rulers and the Spanish rulers at the time and things like that. They're all part of the same family, and so that map was, as it stated, was the sole labor of this guy. All right, and so I want to find out about this guy. because he's going to tie in a major way. So let's read about him briefly. All right. So Augustine Herman, first Lord of Bohemia Manor, right, was a Bohemian explorer, merchant, and cartographer who lived in New Amsterdam and Cecil County, Maryland. In the employment of Cecil Calvert, the second Baron Baltimore, he produced a remarkably accurate map of the Chesapeake Bay and Delaware Bay regions of North America, in exchange for which he was permitted to establish an enormous plantation that he named Bohemia Manor in what is now southeastern Cecil County, Maryland. All right, so he was paid by Cecil for this map, right? And I'm going to get into it more, but what is Bohemian? All right, and why is this going to be so important? A Bohemian is a resident of Bohemia, a region of the Czech Republic or of the former Kingdom of Bohemia, a region of the former Crown of Bohemia, lands of the Bohemian Crown. In English, the word Bohemian was used to denote the Czech people, as well as the Czech language, before the word Czech became prevalent in the early 20th century. And then it also says a separate meaning. Bohemian may also denote a socially unconventional person, especially one who is involved in the arts. Bohemia derives from the name of a Boil or Celtic tribe who inhabited that area towards the later Latine period. And I'm going to get into all of this because, again, it all just comes back to a small point. There is like a landing point for all of this. And I just wanted to show briefly, where did my cursor go? The Kingdom of Bohemia, red and white. What is the flag of England is the red and white cross, right? Bohemia started by these Celts. Where do normally we think of Celts as like the French and Irish even, right? So Irish definitely. So very interesting there. Let's see. So according to the most reliable evidence, Augustine Herman was born about 1621 in Prague, the location he himself stated in his last testament. The claim that he was born in 1605 is the son of Augustine Ephraim Herman and Beatrice. The daughter, oh my God, that's my timer already. Wow. All right, but I'm getting there. This isn't that much longer. Has never been established, nor has the belief that he may have been the son of Abraham Herman, the evangelical pastor of Messino. Accordingly, the claims that his father was a wealthy merchant and councilman of Prague, who was killed in 1620 at the Battle of White Mountain during the 30 Years' War, remains hearsay. So it says here, Herman was trained as a surveyor and was skilled in sketching and drawing. He was also conversant in a number of languages, including Latin, which he successfully applied to his diplomatic assignments with the British. There has been much speculation about Herman's early years. It has been asserted that he made a trip to North America in 1633 when he allegedly signed his name witnessing the Dutch purchase of lands from the Native Americans near the later site of Philadelphia. So they're saying that the guy who did this most detailed, and all by himself he did it. He wants everyone to know he did it all by himself. Map of Chesapeake Bay and Delaware Bay he signed his name to the document that sold Manhattan the contract that the Dutch put up with the Indians. Unbelievable, right? Let's see, and that he made voyages to the Dutch Antilles and Suriname, and that he claimed to be the first founder of the Virginia tobacco trade, which began in 1612. All these claims are undocumented and highly questionable, so he was a braggart. He liked to brag. The witnessing cited above may have been a mistranslation of the original Dutch document. All right, so now we're going to get into some real stuff. That's interesting sort of hearsay. So in 1640, working for the West India Company, Herman arrived in New Amsterdam. Due to his strong personality, he soon became an important member of the Dutch community and its commerce. He was an agent for the mercantile house of Peter Gabry and the Sons of Amsterdam. Now, I know somewhere the web connected mercantile, fabrics and things to, I think it was Robert Smith who formed who was treasurer of the Dutch East India Company and the London Company, and president of the London Company, I think. He was one of the owners of a boat, the La Grace, which engaged in privateering against Spanish commerce. In partnership with his brother-in-law George Hack, he became the largest exporter of tobacco in America. That exporting that tobacco in the 1640s just got here. I mean, how the infrastructure? How did they set it all up? Trading furs and tobacco for wine and slaves. He quickly became wealthy and the owner of considerable real estate, including most of what is now Yonkers today. Interesting. At that point, he was one of the most influential people in New Amsterdam. He was elected in 1647 to Board of the Nine Men, a prominent body of citizens organized to advise and guide the Director General of New Netherland. In time, he would chair this board, so he is an important guy. Unhappy with the leadership of Peter Stuyvesant, Herman was one of the signatories of a complaint, the Vertuig, which was sent to Holland in July 1649. At the same time, things are happening down in Maryland with the formation of the General Assembly and the passing of the Religious Tolerance Act. To represent the poor conditions of this country and pray for redress. In 1651, he negotiated the purchase of Staten Island and a large tract of land along the western shore, from what is now Perth Amboy to Elizabeth. Arthur Kill, interesting name. So he got married. Wait a minute. So Stuyvesant could not let this challenge pass and proceeded to take measures to assure Herman's financial ruin. Yet he was super wealthy. He owned huge tracts of land, was, swinging deals to, for Staten Island. And I mean, how do you financially ruin somebody that has so many holdings and has so much almost ubiquitous power in the community, in the region? Herman was briefly imprisoned for indebtedness. Who could he possibly have been indebted to? That's the thing. I don't understand how that works. And yet, he gets out, and then he gets to go on diplomatic missions. He got sent into timeout. Stuyvesant sent him for Stuyvesant, or whatever. I don't know how you say that, really. Which is a shame, growing up so close to New York. So he gets sprung from, he was put in timeout, for trying to oust, Peter here. And then, Peter's going to send him away. He would send him on diplomatic missions to New England to resolve concerns about rumors of a Dutch and Native American alliance against the English. All right, there's the red and white, right? Bohemia. And of lasting importance, in 1659, he was sent to St. Mary's with resolved Wharton to negotiate the dispute between New Netherlands and Maryland's proprietor Cecil Calvert, ownership of the lands the western shore of the Delaware Bay that were claimed by both parties. Herman first articulated the argument that Lord Baltimore's charter was only good for lands that had not been previously settled, and that the short-lived 1961 Swannendale settlement, right, was at present-day Lewes, Delaware, gave the Dutch prior rights to the whole Delaware River watershed. Baltimore rejected the argument completely. This is what's mentioned in that other thing. But subsequently, the English successors to the Dutch title, the Duke of York and William Penn, were successful in making the case, ultimately leading to the separate existence of the state of Delaware. Regardless of the success of the negotiations, Herman had made a good impression on the Calverts. So he comes in, he swoops in, and successfully negotiates this land away from the Calverts, and the Calverts say, "This is a smart guy. We need him." Right? And so Herman, wary of the conflict with Stuyvesant, and remembering the fine lands he crossed in the upper Chesapeake Bay, offered to produce Lord Baltimore a map of the region in return for the land grant, for a grant of land in the area of his choosing. The offer was accepted, and the grant made in September 1660. And then he went on it took him 10 years to make this map. And one of the things I wanted to point out, which is why I thought it was important to show the crest earlier, is that's a crest for the crown. But this map wasn't made for the crown. It was made for Cecil Baltimore, Cecil Calvert. So it's interesting that he would put the crown on there. And especially with Cecil being so Catholic, and at the time, I believe by now, the English Civil War had already happened, and Catholics were really persona non grata all over the place. So Herman selected his first grant. Oh, wait a minute. I skipped to it too much. It stated that as compensation for his services, Lord Baltimore would grant him lands for inhabitation to his posterity and the privilege of the manor. Wasting no time, Herman moved his family to Maryland by 1661. Herman selected his first grant of 4,000 acres of land and named it Boheme Manor, after his birthplace. Right? So his first grant. And so I'm getting a little too long now. I know my timer's been over, and I want to go more with this, but there's other points that need to be made quickly about the importance of Bohemia, right? And then the Jesuits, and the fact that, the Jesuits at one time sided with Cecil, right? And let Cecil keep his lands, or at least restrict the Jesuit priests of Maryland at the time from claiming lands for themselves away from the Lord Baltimore. This guy comes down, takes that land, gives it to essentially gives it to Delaware and Pennsylvania, and then he says, "Hey man," to Cecil, "I'm going to make you a map," which is interesting, of course, because Cecil isn't even in Baltimore. He doesn't come here at all. I'm going to make this most detailed map. I'm going to spend 10 years of my life making the single most detailed map that can possibly be made of this region. And you're going to give me who knows how much land, 4,000, that he calls Bohemia after his home, right? And so now we're going to go to another book that I found. And also I wanted to mention, I believe, let's see, I'll come to it in the end. I'll conclude with it. So I found this book, Old Bohemia, 1704. Right, and so now these lands have this church put on it. This is the Bohemian lands, right? First, St. Francis of Xavier, right? Old Bohemia Church. This is where the Jesuits, this was the Jesuit school in Maryland, right? And Bohemia Plantation, now known as Old Bohemia, right? So this is the same part of that 4,000 land, right? On March 25th, 1634, Leonard Calvert, Cecil's brother, who actually did come here and was governor, and 200 colonists from the Ark and the Dove landed on St. Clement's Island. That's not what I want. So just to give you, to close it out, an example. So John Carroll, who becomes the first bishop of Baltimore, where did he go to school? me a minute. Yeah. John Carroll was schooled at home by his mother before being sent to Catholic school at Boheme Manor. All right. Secretly conducted by Father Thomas Polton, a Jesuit. So here's now where the Jesuit Catholic connections come in at this Bohemian Manor, which was founded by Augustine Herman, right? As a reward for making this map for Cecil. And so all of this is going to get tied in. And I wanted to see. I couldn't remember his last name when I did my quick Google search. I wanted to see if no. There was a great picture of him in here. Let's see if it comes back up. Come on now, killing me. He looks like I don't know how this reference is going to be lost on anybody to me, but given his reputation as a braggart and all of these things and his smooth negotiations, he looks an awful lot like Ron Jeremy to me. He looks like the Hedgehog. Anyway, that's where I'm going to end this one. I hope it didn't go too long. We're going to see. So yeah, season 2, we're in it now. I've got information in hand. I've got a couple of other presentations coming. I've got one coming over the weekend that I hope comes out well and I can really present. And then, yeah, next week, season 2 is going to get rolling for real. Thank you so much for listening. If you like what's going on over here in Mud City, please like, share, and subscribe. And so until the next one, cheers, guys.